Hey everyone, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you for taking the time to join us at our webinar today on mental fitness. And so, give you a little background of what we're going to cover. We're going to talk about mental fitness. We're going to give you the definition of what it is, why it's important, some of the challenges that we all face with mental fitness, and we're going to introduce you to a program called Positive Intelligence, a framework that helps to strengthen your mental fitness. And I'm going to share some personal stories with you. Also, have a guest that I'm going to bring in. We'll introduce her in a few moments. But without any further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. Also, depending on how you're joining us, you may or may not be able to post questions or comments in the chat box. That's okay. I'm going to post the recording afterwards onto social media. You can comment there and ask your questions, and I'll be reviewing that to get back with you as well. So let's get started. So, what is mental fitness? Mental fitness refers to that strength and resilience of one's mental and emotional faculties, so to speak. It's about how we train our mind to respond to life's challenges and maintain a positive attitude. It's a lot like physical fitness. We this is the beginning of the year 2024. Everybody's got some New Year's resolutions, and probably a large percentage of you had a resolution to get in shape, right? So mental fitness has the same concept. As a matter of fact, I shared this story with some the other day, and my son, I think it was the first time he heard the story. I ran a half marathon one time many years ago. We lived in San Antonio. I thought, hey, I can do it. I was in the Army. I'm in reasonable shape. Yeah, and we'll talk about those lies we tell ourselves in a minute. But that was a lie I was telling myself, that I was in reasonable shape. I'll be okay. What could go wrong? It's only 13 miles, right? So the day came, I went out, I started running, I felt good about myself. And a few miles into it, I started realizing I wasn't in shape. I wasn't fit enough to do what I had set out to do. Now, had I trained for it, had I exercised some physical fitness procedures, some goals, then my experience would have been different. I may even run another one. But since that half marathon, I've never run another one, have no desire to. Now, I've since got in better shape, but that experience was not a positive experience. And so it was because I wasn't fit. Well, mental fitness prepares us for the mental experiences that the challenges that we may come across. So there's six aspects or characteristics that we'll touch on when it comes to mental fitness. The first is self awareness, okay? Recognizing your own thought patterns, emotions, and behaviors, and how they impact you and your decision making, or how you respond to things. That's the negative side and the positive side. We'll also look at that emotional regulation. That's the ability to manage and control our emotions and through various situations rather than being impulsively driven by them. And I'm sure we can all remember times to where, our emotions led us to a decision or a reaction. Another aspect is resilience, the ability to bounce back quickly from difficulties or setbacks and maintaining a positive mindset through the whole situation. Another characteristic is optimism and positivity. So, what does that mean? Cultivating that positive mindset and remaining it focused on the opportunities of a situation rather than the problems or the obstacle. We also see mindfulness and presence. Practicing mindfulness to remain present and engaged in the current time, not thinking about what could happen or fearing what possibly could come, but maintaining the resilience to sit in that current state and not worry about the future. And finally, the sixth characteristic is that empathy and compassion, developing the ability to understand and share the feelings of others, but also being empathetic and compassionate with ourselves, because sometimes we are our own worst enemy. So how can we do this? This is where I want to introduce you to a concept or a framework of positive intelligence. So positive intelligence is a framework based upon neuroscience, cognitive behavioral psychology, positive psychology, and performance science. It's the idea that where we spend most of our time thinking will determine our actions and our outcomes. So, do we allow our mind to sabotage us, or do we allow our mind to serve us? So, that's where the positive intelligence framework begins. It actually sits among all the other, the IQ, where the knowledge, the skill set. Can I do math? Can I analyze a problem? Do I have memory or memory recall? And we're familiar with EQ, that emotional quotient. What motivating me? That's self-regulation. And we're familiar with adaptability quotient. Can I be resilient? Can I refocus? Well, PQ sits right among these and utilizes aspects of all of them. It's about that self-awareness. It's about the ability to unlearn and maybe even relearn some things that we've had in the past. Being inquisitive and curious about the problems that we face, not just letting them control us. So we're going to dive a little deeper into this. So what happens when a thought comes into our brain? It goes through a neural pathway, and it goes either to the left side or the right side. And it's by choice. Okay. The left side of the brain, this is our survival brain. Okay. It's innate in all of us. It's there for a purpose. Think about when you hear that rustling sound in the woods, when you're out camping, what's the first thing you think about? Oh my God, there's a bear out here and it's going to eat me, right? So that's your survival brain. It's there for a reason, to protect us from danger. But if we stay in survival brain, then it no longer protects us, it harms us. All right. So this is the survival brain side, or the left side. That is the very analytical part of our brain. It looks at the minute details and it tries to form those details, even if they're not there. And it motivates us through negative emotions. You need to run. There's danger. Okay. That's a negative emotion. Whereas the right side of the brain, this is the big picture. It motivates us through positive emotions. What can I learn from this experience? I hear that rustle in the woods. Well, maybe it's not a bear. Maybe it's a squirrel. Maybe it's just the wind. What can I learn from this? That's the concept of positive intelligence, understanding how thought processes come through our brain, the neural pathways that it takes, and how can we control that better. Okay. Now, let's spend some time and look on those negative aspects, that left side of the brain. So we have saboteurs. All right. Now, our saboteurs were created for a reason. Most of them were created when we were young to protect us from something that, as a child, we didn't have the emotional capability to handle, understand, or recover from. So we were in survival mode. Move us away from the danger so that we could survive. Now, we've got the judge and his 9 little accomplices. All right. So the judge, everybody has the judge. It's always present. Okay. This is the master saboteur, so to speak. And he criticizes us for our own shortcomings. The judge will also criticize others for their actions or maybe even inactions. And it can also blame the environment or circumstances. Life isn't fair. So that's why I'm not able to do this. I didn't get the promotion because, my company doesn't care for me. Whatever the case may be, that judge is always there. And to understand too, the saboteurs are always there because they do have a purpose. But the idea is that we don't listen to them for very long. Recognize what they're saying and move on. So let's spend a little bit of time really quickly and go through kind of what the saboteurs are. And as I'm doing this, think about which ones you can understand, you can see in yourself. And I'll share with you what my top one is. So I'll go through them, no particular order. Let's start with the stickler. All right, the stickler. This saboteur is obsessed with perfectionism, order, and organization. Now, there's nothing wrong with order and organization. I just moved my office from downstairs to upstairs. What you can't see is the disorder and disorganization in my office right now. And it's impacting me. I don't like it. So when I'm done with this, I'll clean up. But I understand that, hey, it's just letting me know, hey, I got a little stress here. I'll deal with it later because I need to. But it's also the opportunity for me to design my office and decorate it the way I want. So I'm not going to let the saboteur take control. But often our stickler puts so much pressure on, perfection that we lose out on the opportunity to see how things could be or even our well-being. And then we have the pleaser, all right? This saboteur focuses on gaining acceptance and affection by helping and pleasing others. Again, nothing wrong with being a person who helps others and enables others to succeed, but it can lead to the loss of your own identity and a lack of equitable and balanced relationships. Because if I'm always trying to please you, I'm forgetting about who I am. So the pleaser, if any of these resonate with you, think about it and how they do so. Another one is the hyperachiever. This saboteur is dependent on constant performance and achievement for any self-respect or self-esteem that they may be trying to get for self-validation. It focuses on that external successes and often forgets about the internal piece. Often the person who struggles with the hyperachiever may be a workaholic, okay? The next one, the victim, all right? This saboteur strives on internal misery and suffering, often to gain attention and affection. These are the folks that are saying, oh, this happened to me. It leads to focus internally on the feeling, particularly painful ones. This is the reason I can't move forward because I was treated this way. We often find ourselves going back to our childhood of how we are who we are because of how we were raised. We also see the hyper rational. All right. This saboteur focuses extensively on rational thinking and analysis, getting into the fine details, and this can lead to often emotional disconnection with yourself and others, because it's not looking at, what are the emotions that are involved in my growth. Maybe I've got to do this. Well, I did it this way because, well, this is always how we did it. So it has to be successful, right? Maybe somebody like this. The next one, the restless. This saboteur is always searching for greater excitement, okay? A change in environment because they can't be satisfied where they are, how they are right now. And it doesn't mean that I can't go out and look for a transformation in who I am or fun activities. But if that's all that I'm constantly seeking that in order to find satisfaction and approval, then I can consider that's my hyper rational or my restless saboteur coming into play. And then we have the controller. This saboteur feels a need to take charge and control of every situation because they feel that only they can do it right. I'm not going to release control to somebody else because of fear of failure that will reflect on me. And it's really not a logical aspect. Hey, if somebody else fails, that's okay. It doesn't reflect on you as a leader, as a person. That's somebody else. But yet that saboteur tells us that we can't be successful if we're not in control. And finally, we have the avoider. This saboteur focuses on the positive and pleasant, but in an unhealthy manner, avoiding difficult and unpleasant tasks, conversations, conflict. It leads us to living with unresolved issues. Okay. Now, I promised you I'd share with what my number one saboteur is, and mine is the avoider. Okay. Now, I explained up front of how the saboteurs come into play. They're there to protect us as kids. That's where they were developed for whatever reason. But as we grow older, they become habits and behaviors that actually keep us from being successful and growing. So like I said, mine was the avoider. Where did that avoider grow from? Well, by the time from birth until I was 13, my mom was married I think, to 7 different men, some of those multiple times. The majority of them were alcoholics. So this is the lifestyle that I grew up in. So my avoider was telling me, stay where you're comfortable. Don't go and face this issue because it's scary, it's dangerous. Now, as a kid, it protected me. But as you get older, as I got older, it no longer protected me. It became a hindrance. So I had to understand I can't control what's happening around me, but I can have the conversations. I can deal with the issue as it arises because it's not going to go away. So the avoider, that one's mine. Now, all the sad stuff is out of the way now that you know that these saboteurs are here. But part of the positive intelligence mindset is the fact that we want to concentrate on that right brain. That's where our strength is. That's the sage. So the sage helps us through our issues, our problems, our struggles, through 5 different powers. Okay, we'll go through them a little briefly here. Again, no particular order. But there's empathize, the power of empathize. This power involves understanding and sharing feelings of others, as well as being compassionate towards yourself. Empathy allows us to get a deeper understanding and build stronger connections because we understand what's going on and the reason behind an action or a word or an event. Okay. The next one is explore. This is the power to get curious, to investigate, to have an open mindset and ask questions. Oftentimes, let's put this in a work environment, right? Somebody comes up with an idea. You don't think it's a good idea. You don't think it'll work. Well, instead of following the saboteur and killing the idea, why don't you ask questions? Okay, dig a little deeper. There may be some validity in it. Instead of saying yes, but say yes, and I see your point. And what about this? And then engage in that conversation. So that's the explorer power of the sage, which leads us to innovate. The power of innovation involves thinking outside the box and seeing new possibilities. I've always tried to make sure that I was never the smartest person in the room. As John Maxwell says, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. I want to go somewhere where somebody challenges me with new ideas. And that innovate power of the sage allows us to do that. And then we have navigate. This power is about choosing the path that best aligns to your deeper values and long-term objectives, rather than choosing the path that may be easy. Okay, because this involves wisdom and the ability to make decisions not only on what feels right, but what's right in the broader sense, for the broader context of your own life, your organization, your team, whatever the case may be. It helps us stay focused on those true goals and make choices that lead to genuine fulfillment and success. And finally, the 5th power is activate. This is the power to taking decisive actions and moving forward with confidence and resilience. It's the ability to turn insights and decisions into effective action. So what the positive intelligence program does is it gives you the ability to strengthen your sage power and lessen your saboteurs. I said in the beginning that your saboteurs are always there. It's the ability, though, to utilize the sage muscle. So it takes practice, it takes exercise, it takes a fitness level. All right. So that what happens is you've got an event. It comes into your mind, through your neural pathways. With the positive intelligence framework, you're now able to exercise, pause, and choose which direction it's going to go. Are you going to utilize your sage powers, or are you going to allow the saboteurs to take control of your actions and your decisions? So this comes down to, let's get fit. Let's work on that brain. Now, what are some everyday aspects that you think positive intelligence could impact you? I'm going to stop sharing the slides real quick because I want to share a personal story with you. So it could be life in general. It could be work. It could be um, a relationship, whatever the case may be, any event, any thought that comes through your mind, mental fitness is the key to making sure that it's taking the right pathways, that we're utilizing our sage muscles, all right, our sage versus our saboteur to get us through whatever event it is. Maybe it's a crisis. So I'll share a crisis in our family that we had, that mental fitness has been a huge impact on our ability to be resilient and recover. A little over 3 years ago, July of 2020, our youngest son, Ethan, was 17 at the time, and he suffered a massive stroke in his sleep. We take him to the emergency room. We're told that to prepare ourselves, that he was not going to make it because of the massive bleed. They airlifted him to Inova Fairfax for surgery. They took a huge chunk of his skull out to allow the brain to swell. And he did live, and he was paralyzed on the left side. We spent 8 weeks in the hospital in Baltimore, Kennedy Krieger, for outpatient or inpatient. Spent another 8 weeks outpatient care there, and it's been a long recovery process. Okay, but talk about a mental strain on everyone in the family, and to include Ethan. But he's been amazing. All right, but it wasn't just our own mental fitness that allowed us to get through this, but it was through the impact of others that we met that came in our path. So I'm gonna bring on a guest who Carol Cantello. Carol is an OT by trade, but not an occupational therapist. But she's so much more. We were introduced to Carol after Ethan left the hospital and started his regular ongoing therapy, and she's his OT. They meet twice a week. But Carol has been such an impact on Ethan's mental fitness and ours. So I'm gonna bring Carol in. Hey, Carol.
Hello, everyone. I'm good, thanks.
Carol, can you give a little background on what you do and why mental fitness is so important in everything you do?
Sure. So as an occupational therapist, the one thing we focus on is how to get people back to their lives and addressing whatever has come in to interfere with their success. So whether it be motor control, emotional control, physical control of their body, any factors that influence their ability to do everyday living tasks, job tasks, sports, anything in your life, right? So then we look at what's interfering, whether it be cognition, emotional self-regulation, brain damage in itself, and how can we build back what we need to get you to have the life that you want, and also look at really what's holding you back. Getting that awareness to slow down and say, well, while I'm working on this, what things are moving me forward, but also what's holding me back. And that insight into how prepared you actually are versus what you in your story about running and training, where we think we are and where we're really at is often not the same place. And so getting clear vision about how we're seeing our lives and the factors that are influencing them.
So how have you seen with, and we'll talk about Ethan in a minute, but how have you seen those saboteurs that we talked about come into play with some of your clients?
Well, saboteurs, right, to me, so, everybody has different frameworks, right? So, I may use different words for the same exact things, right? So I'll take a look at like personality traits coupled with brain function and how they're coming together, because those things come together and they affect your belief system, right? And so for instance, if somebody believes it's impossible to get well, then they're not going to get well, So our belief systems are going to, everything we believe, we are going to take action or create inaction to support that belief system. So it was interesting at church this weekend. The sermon was excellent, but at one point of it, like my hair stood up because the pastor's talking about, he's using a good story about himself and change and how hard it is to change. But he talks about how his doctor told him that his cholesterol and his fitness and his health is all genetic. There was nothing in his life that was in his control. He just needed to take these pills for the rest of his life. So how he's come along to that's what he's going to do. And I'm sitting there thinking, you're giving up the role of your own self in your life, right? So that there's these partial truths in our lives that get distorted. So while why genetics plays a role in all of our health, right? Genetics could play a role in Ethan's malformation in his brain leading to the
Mhm.
stroke, right? But there's other factors that, then go on later to make a greater influence. So we want to take a look at what's within our control truly and what's outside our control, and getting a better, clearer vision of what those things are. So because when we hold those false beliefs, you're taking a choice every day, things that are automatic. You're moving towards something, whether you're conscious of that belief or not, right? So if you don't think you have any control over your health or your thoughts, then it's like, that's just the way I am. That's who I am. That's how I was born. That's how our whole family is. We all have this problem. We all do this. And so you lose the ability to grow and change through distorted beliefs.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that for a minute on, what is in our control. I know, like with Ethan, obviously the his ruptured AVM, the arterial venous malformation, it was something we've determined or understood that he was born with, out of his control. Didn't have anything to do with it. It wasn't he wasn't healthy. He was extremely healthy and fit, but this happened. Um, it wasn't in our control. We didn't cause this. It just
Right.
happened. But what are the things that are in our control that we can take advantage of and build on in order to build resilience and grow?
Well, I think that's a really valid point, because a lot of things that do occur to us in lives are not our fault per se. And it's then, how do we respond to what has occurred with what we've got, with where we're at, and where do we start, right? So I've said to you and your family multiple times, everything that we come into life, is going to influence the future outcome. So the fact that Ethan was in such good shape and coordinated and was such a good athlete, that for sure gives him this motor neural pathways that have already been very formed to assist him in his rehab and recovery for his physical skills now. So, if he didn't have those skills, his recovery would be harder and longer. If not, he'd never get to where he's at today, even, right? So we want to look at what's part of what's in our control is healing the brain and the body and the nervous system, and they're all separate things. And I think what's so important is to find really what's in your control. Is you first have to control your nervous system. So if it's in a case of trauma, right, your nervous system can spiral out of control, and its job is to protect you. So in the beginning, when we worked with Ethan, remember all his hives and things like that, that was his
Mhm.
autonomic nervous system. His body could no longer cool itself off. So its best attempt at cooling off whenever he exerted himself, was to create these hives, because it forced him to slow down, and then he could cool off. So he was exceeding his current capacity. But as we've retrained his nervous system over time, he now can do more motor, physically challenging things without creating that same nervous system response. And so it's a lot. I don't know where we're going to get all to this today, but there's a lot to go into about learning how to self-regulate your autonomic nervous system, because oftentimes if we try to superimpose like high level cognitive skills
Mhm.
on a already agitated, sensitized nervous system, your brain can't function, right? So the part of the brain, the frontal lobe, which is executive function, that helps us make good decisions, consider the future, be reasonable, not impulsive. Um, if we're in a highly charged emotional state, super stressed out, that part of your brain turns off. It's like a seesaw. So if your limbic system, your emotional system, is on fire and going, overworking, then your frontal lobe is underworking. So I would say what's in your control, generally speaking, is we talk about controlling, in my framework, right? We talk about controlling your physiology, influencing your body to
Mhm.
control your brain. So if you're already stressed out, we call it bottoms up. You want to do a body technique,
Right.
right? Before you do a top down cognitive technique. So you might need to, do some breathing, do some meditation, take a walk, do something to calm your nervous system before you tackle, um, a cognitive task, before you try and write a
Mhm.
presentation, before whatever you're going to attempt to do that's new, challenging, or hard, because they're two incompatible states.
Right.
So part of what's in your control is it's learning to
Mhm.
control your nervous system, right?
No,
And
absolutely.
knowing that you can make your brain function a billion times better by controlling your limbic or emotional system. And when you're struggling to make a decision, um, to organize your thoughts, to organize a presentation, to take a chance on new things, you can't do any of those things when you're in a survival state,
Right.
right? When it's all about how do I get through today? Am
Mhm.
I safe?
No, absolutely. And that it brings me back to that whole idea of that fitness, getting that mental fitness, getting to the point to where you're equipped before the crisis. And it's you now it's not saying you can't get into a fitness state after the crisis, but it's so much more difficult. And like you said with Ethan, physically, he was physically fit. And I believe that our family dynamic aided in his recovery and his resilience because, and we tell people this all the time, for a 17-year-old kid for this to go through, had you asked me the year before or whatever, if this happened to Ethan, do I think he would have responded in the way he has? The answer would have probably been no, because
Right.
I'd have looked at him as a 17-year-old kid, like most 17-year-old kids. But one thing he never has done is he's never asked why, because that's where that our brain wants to go to. Why did this happen with me? That's where it's stuck in the survival side, that left brain getting into the details. Well, I could have done this, I should have done this. But understanding that that's out of our control, and making sure that our thought process, and that's the whole idea behind the positive intelligence framework. And like you said, there's several frameworks out there that do the same thing, but it's being able to take a moment, breathe, exercise our right side of the brain, look at what can I gain from this particular event, or this, even if it's life changing, there's something to learn from it. And it's not saying that, that was the purpose of it. One of the things that, my wife and I had talked about this when it happened to Ethan, and we're Christians, people of faith, and thank God nobody came up to me and said this, because I believe even as a Christian I'd have slapped them. Um, you know, this is part of God's plan. No, it wasn't. it's just
Right.
it just
Yeah.
it just happened. But having the mental capacity and the fitness level to go through that and still go through it every day, and look and go, okay, this happened. What can I gain from it? It's already done. I can't change that. Can I gain, maturity? Can I see the opportunity to help others through this? Absolutely. There's ways to turn that around. Um, but that whole mental fitness piece it's a continuous process. It's not something that,
Yes.
you got it, you don't have it, or you build it and then you leave it alone. So, I mean, even with Ethan, and you tell him this all the time, his recovery is gradual. Okay, it's not something that, okay, press a button. There is no easy button in life. There's things that make things easier, but
Yeah.
it's not an easy button. So, if you had to give any advice to those that are watching now and that will be watching later, is when it comes to attaining and maintaining mental fitness, what would it be?
Well, I think, I'll say that you look at your mental fitness very much similar to your physical fitness. So you need, for me, when I'm looking at physical fitness and mental fitness, I'm looking, are you mobile? So in your body, can your joints move enough? Do you have enough motion in your joints to get the job done? In your brain, are you mobile enough? Can you shift gears? Like, there's a part of your brain called the cingulate gyrus that's responsible for shifting on. Like, can I get out of the old state of emotions? Can I focus on the task I need to do now? Right. So that ability to move on and shift appropriately. So I think about mobility. I look at stability, right? And is a joint stable enough to do its job? Is my mind stable enough? Can I shift in and out of the states of self-regulation, right? Can I mobilize my energy enough to get something done? Can I calm myself down enough also that I have the right amount of gas on the pedal, and I also can brake when I need to, and without choking, right? So if you look at your Dallas boys last night, right?
Oh, I
There's
knew you were going to bring
some,
that up.
right? There's something going on there with Dacky boy in his brain, right? So he has a great season. There's part of that belief system. There's no doubt in my mind. You know what's going on under pressure, right? Parts of that, right? So we want to be able to shift gears when we need to either ramp up or calm down. So we have enough of the part of the brain on that stimulates us, right, to keep going, but doesn't put us in that fight, flight, or fear state, because
Right.
that's when we can't think straight, right? So, and then timing. Are we doing things, in the body, it's the right muscle at the right time, at the right intensity for the job that's required. Well, it's the same thing for the brain. Do I have enough cognitive flexibility? Do I have enough attention? Does my executive function high enough? We look at the parts, and is the timing, are they coming on at the right time? Do I need to spend more time, like literally calming my nervous system? Do I need to do more things to enact my insula, which is a right and left side of the brain thing for conscientiousness, for being able to have empathy. We build whatever we're trying to build in life. There are neural networks are getting reinforced and paired together to get stronger, just like a muscle. So the more you use it, the more it gets insulated with a substance called myelin, which means it travels down the nerve faster and faster and faster. So things happen automatically. Right. So the more we do something often enough, the easier it gets. So that eventually, like, you drive to work without thinking about it. You can play a song on your guitar. It's automatic. Now, here's the thing, the twist in all this is 95% of our lives become automatic. Like, we're actually functioning subconsciously 95% of the time with these habits that have been myelinated and are super fast. So that can serve us because it saves us energy. In the ideal world, it's saving you energy, so you have the energy for these new tasks, right? If you, on the other hand, right, if you get in a state of perseverating on like negative thoughts and negative habits, and you get off task and you just stay off task, and you train your brain to stay off task, you train your brain to be anxious, you train your brain to have this response, right? So we want to break up certain teams and separate them so we can form new teams and reinforce them and get them strong, and then have the ability to have them strong enough that even when we're tired, our brain will choose that path that's taking us towards our goal, not getting in front of us and interrupting and sabotaging us, right? So we can get good whatever we practice. It sounds simpler than it is, but whatever we put together, enough, frequent enough, consistent enough, that's the skill we're going to get. Now, coupled with that is just the concept of sometimes that nervous system is just hijacking our brain. So we have to know, learning where we're at, and having an accurate awareness of our current state is part of the challenging part, because we often just kind of have dialogues with ourselves that are not truths. I'm good.
Absolutely.
I'm fine. That's not a problem, right?
No,
I've got that.
And that goes back to that lie I told myself that I was in shape and could run that half marathon.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So most of the time, remember, when I'm telling you this, it's fact. 95% of the time, people are operating from habits. So if you don't really slow down to look at your belief systems and your thoughts and what's getting you through your day towards your goals, or what actually got in the way, we are responding always in life to every event that has happened prior to.
Correct.
Right? So we respond to sight, smell, touch, sound of previous events. And so I often ask people to say, when they're looking at what role am I in, when you're saying, what's my saboteur today, is like, what's interfering? Am I responding to the present? Am I responding to the past? And these happen in our nervous system so fast until we've learned to process and integrate old experiences. like childhood, like attachment, like, so there's all these things that come into this. I'm sure when you get into the program, you get into all these things in much more detail. But our attachment styles, what's gone on, they form these automatic neural networks about how we respond when we get afraid, when we get overwhelmed, where somebody makes us feel just like mom did, when somebody makes us feel like that terrible event in our life.
Right.
It's happening just like that. And so we're responding to our triggers, and we don't tend to see like the glimmers in life easy enough. And so life gets
Right.
harder, growth gets harder, change gets harder instead of easier. So when we increase our awareness to how all these factors, right, influence every single choice. I mean, smell just bypasses everything in your body. It'll take you to a place that you've been, and whether you can remember it is irrelevant. Your nervous system will go there, and then your brain will start responding with the same thoughts and behaviors that you had had back at that time, if at some point you haven't learned to process and integrate them.
Right. And that's the whole concept of what we're talking about with the positive intelligence, is that first of all, that awareness, what are my saboteurs? My saboteurs are different than your saboteurs. So
Absolutely.
understanding who we are, where we are, and how we are allows us to then move forward and transform and change, just like physical fitness. Okay. Before
Yep.
I start on a exercise program, the first thing I better do, if I'm going to go see a trainer, first thing they're going to do is evaluate my current state. Because if I said, okay, I want to run a marathon, all right, me running a marathon is a lot different than, say, a professional soccer player running a marathon.
Absolutely.
because it's going to take more work. It's a different path for me. And that's the same thing with mental fitness. To become mentally fit to where you've develop the abilities to minimize the saboteur conversations, and utilizing the sage conversations requires, first of all, an assessment of where you are. And with our positive intelligence program, we do that. We determine, all right, where are your who are your saboteurs, and at what level are they impacting you. Only then can you understand them and recognize them when they show up. Talking about the triggers, okay? Know what a trigger is, what triggers a behavior out of you. If I'm driving down the Beltway here in the DC area, and traffic is hellacious, and somebody's going in and out and cutting in front of me, that's a trigger. All right. But in those milliseconds between the event and my action is the behavior I choose based upon my ability to take the time and pause, or do I let the emotions just happen? So that's the whole concept behind the positive intelligence program. And we want to offer it to anyone that's interested in getting a little more information. There was a couple. I've got a deal going on right now, but you know what? I'm not going to post that. I want to post this out on social media and let you guys take it. Everybody that looks at it, take advantage of it. If you want to learn more about the positive intelligence program, you can email me at info@azimuthconsultingllc.com, and just put in the subject line positive intelligence, and I'll touch back with you and explain the program. We can set up a discovery call, or if you just want to check out our social media or get in contact with me any other way, you can text leadership to 321-421-5213, and you'll get my digital business card. If you want to get in touch with Carol and want to talk to Carol, again, you can contact me and I will put you in touch with her. She's more than just our OT. She's been a lifesaver, been working with Ethan for a little over 3 years now. And if you're having any physical issues that you need to recover from, I'd highly, and you're in the Northern Virginia area, I don't think Carol wants to or can drive out to anywhere, but she's at least worth a call and a contact so that you can learn more. Carol, I want to thank you for joining us today and taking your time on this holiday for many, and I think all those that took the time to jump in on the webinar. And I'd love to bring you back for another one. We go a little more in depth for mental fitness. So everyone, thank you. Good day and have a great week. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, Larry.